Welcome to Southeast Wargaming. Today I'm doing something a little different. I'm going to show you how to paint Nighthaunt my way. As I said, it is something a little different today. It's not something I would normally do. It's purely because a few of you lovely people have asked how I do paint my Nighthaunt in that like icy blue tone. It's pretty straightforward. This isn't going to be some kind of crazy in-depth guide or anything. It's just going to show you how I do it. There's a lot of other channels that are so much better than I am at painting. And probably a lot of you guys are too. But it's just how I get that kind of icy blue effect, and to hopefully help someone that maybe wants to create the same kind of same look, or just wants to use a different colour other than the G-dub kind of standard kind of tones they give you and everything. So hopefully it helps. But we're going to paint a little Grimghast Reaper today. So let's get to it. Never done this before. Let's see how it goes. Right, so here we are with the Grimghast Reaper, primed in Corax white, just because that's how I've done all the others before contrast came out. I've got me water, me clean water, then I've got just the first couple of paints we're going to be using. Right, so first thing I did when I painted my Nighthaunt, when we started, well, just before we started the Path of Glory, and I got Soul Wards, was I didn't want to paint them the same way G-dubs was. I wanted my own little spin on it. And I've always liked, kind of like, if you've played World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King, I've always kind of liked that style of undead, that kind of like icy blue tone that kind of goes with them. So that's what I went for. And I was like, how do I achieve this? And make it like quick to paint as well. So how do I achieve this and make it quick to paint? So the first thing I did was decided kind of like what I wanted my main kind of base to be. What was the ice blue base? And I actually went with Lothern blue. So this is the blue I went with, but we apply it a little differently than you normally would. So I've got my palette here. It's an old palette. Everything I use is super old, don't judge me. It's ye old faithful. So what I do, first of all, shake your paints, as you normally do, as you should. So first of all, we're going to get a little bit on your brush. Woohoo! If that's, again, this isn't going as well as I thought. Put that on your palette. So then what you do, normally you'd always thin them down, but with this I wanted it more of a glaze. So what I do is I add in some Lamia Medium. Now I didn't used to use Lamia Medium, I had my own that Dan, you know Dan, his friend made for me, but I lost that, so I'm using Medium. And you want it about a 1 to 3 mix of Lamia Medium to your paint. So if we bring that over here, so I've got one blob of Lothern blue in the palette. Then we'll add 1, 2, 3 of Lamia Medium, then mix that all in. So it creates a very watery kind of effect. So basically, I don't know if you can see that very well. Let's see if I can help out. So it's almost running just completely through. And the reason I did this is because I still want to show some of the white through on the model, on the miniature. So the next, what we do is you take your model. Oh, this is going to be an absolute nightmare to focus today, isn't it? Come on, come on. Oh, I have to do it. Let's see. There we go. And then what you do, you take this blue and you apply it all over the miniature. So we'll do that now. And be liberal, we can go over all of the little bits and bobs of the miniature. But you just mainly want to cover, you'll cover the whole thing. You don't have to cover the weapon. But everything else, yes, because it just gives you a nice kind of blue undertone over the whole thing. It is kind of relaxing. I feel like Bob Ross, just with less hair on my head and more on my chin. And not as an amazing of a voice. But I'm sure there will be a lot of happy little accidents today, because I'm not the best painter. But this is kind of fun. Okay, so that's the end of this phase. So as you can see, I've covered the entire miniature in that Lothram blue kind of glaze. I just realised these miniatures I kind of bought second hand. I can see they haven't even put the model together properly here. And of course there's still some kind of glaring mod lines, but oh well, it is what it is. So, next what we do, we're going to paint the cowl, so you can see all this section here. And the colour I use for that is a colour that's not used too much. It's Dark Reaper. So put some of this on my palette, and we'll thin it down with some water, and we'll get to painting. Okay, so we've got the Dark Reaper on palette, it's all watered down, so we'll get to painting. Just got to be careful, so I'm using a smaller brush this time to not get any on the kind of lower section of the ghost, the Grimghast Reaper. Just paint that all the way around. So basically you can see this kind of natural line that goes all the way around. You just keep to that and paint that all with your colour choice. Mine is Dark Reaper, and I'll show you how that ends up. And then we have the cowl has been done for the Grimghast Reaper. I've only done one coat. Normally you'd like to do 2 thin coats. I've just done 1 thin coat because, again, I'm not trying to win any painting awards for this. It's just to get tabletop ready, camera ready really, in the sense that filming battle reports looks 3 foot fabulous. Let me just try and, I don't know what's going on. This bloody focus. How do I camera? So yeah, as I was saying, all the Dark Reaper done. So normally I would do two thin coats, but I kind of like the single coat. So we're going to dry brush over it anyway with Thunderhawk blue, but also leave some of the blue kind of showing through, just faintly. And I kind of like that. Don't know why, just do. So let that dry. Next step we're going to do, we're going to dry brush over the entire over all the blue bits, Uthran grey. And we're going to dry brush just kind of up into the little bit of the Dark Reaper when that dries. It's just to give a bit of definition and a bit of transition in between the two colours. Okay, so the next step, get your Uthran grey. This is going to be a dry brush over 90% of the miniature. So open that up. Got me trusty dry brush here. Oh man. So what I'll do, I'm not going to go over what dry brushing is. You just want a little bit on your brush, and then you wipe most of it away. So you're kind of left with probably a bit less than that on the brush. And you take the miniature, and we're just going to back and forth, so it gives that kind of nice, kind of ghostly kind of feel there. And we're going to go over most of the blue parts with this dry brushing technique. And what we can do, when we get to the Dark Reaper, we can actually go into the Dark Reaper a little bit, just like at the bottom, so kind of like, if you can see it, kind of going into it a bit there, but no higher than that, no higher than like, I don't know, 20% up onto the Dark Reaper, just to create a transition. So we'll do 1 layer of dry brush all over, then we're going to go back and dry brush. Going to go do the same thing again, but just dry brush more of the tips to give more of a lighter kind of tip to them. So now that we've done 1 layer of dry brush, you can see it's kind of, oh, you might be able to see, it's given a really nice kind of like ghostly effect to all of the blue. And as you can see, we've gone up about 20%ish onto the Dark Reaper just to create a bit of a transition. We've gone over all of the light blue bits with this dry brush. Then what we're going to do the exact same thing to dry brush again, but I'm just going to keep it towards more of the tips of the kind of ghostly parts, just to create a bit more of a transition. So same thing, I've switched to a smaller dry brush this time, just because I found the big one was a little too bulky for me. Plus this is slightly more kind of focused as to where I'm putting it. But we shall see. Right. Yep, that's about right. So what we're going to do, go over the miniature again, but we're going to just kind of go mostly on the tips, just to create just that one more, to make them lighter, as you can see, just to hopefully you can see on these bits here. I'll do it down here as well. so it creates a stronger transition, but still go over the whole miniature lightly, but just focus on those tips to give that kind of white into the ice blue transition. Okay, so there we are. The dry brushing done of the Uthran Grey. Both sides just focused more towards the tips, but all the blue bits have been dry brushed with Uthran to get a kind of like really nice ghostly ice blue finish. So next we're going to use Thunderhawk Blue and do the same thing. We're not going to wash our dry brush because we want to keep that Uthran Grey on there. We're going to get Thunderhawk Blue and do all of the darker bits, the exact same technique. And generally, because we're not washing this brush, the dry brush, it will add kind of a nice effect. So I'll show you how that looks in a sec, because I'm not prepared. There we go. So Thunderhawk Blue, and I must make a note with dry brushing, you don't actually need to thin down the paint because you want it kind of basically to wipe off quite nicely. So get a bit on the brush, you can see that, and then wipe most of it off. And you can use kitchen roll, loo roll, whatever you want for that. Just going to make sure. And then dry brush over all the dark bits, and it gives a really nice kind of like, let's see if I can, gives a really nice kind of lighter Thunderhawk Blue dry brush over all of the dark bits. So it still retains that Thunderhawk Blue, but it's got that Uthran Grey kind of tint and makes it kind of nice to transition. I may have put a little too much on this one, but oh well. Never mind, eh? I think that's fine for now. So there we go. That's all of the cowl and the actual ghostly bits done. So what next we'll do all the silver, which will be the chainmail in here, and also the main head of the scythe. I don't think there's anything else metal until later, because this bit's going to be red. This kind of like trim on the cowl will be red, and we'll just like pick out the bolts with the silver later on. And then so we need lead belcher or whatever silver / lead equivalent you use paint. Not lead, silver, yeah. So iron kind of silvery paint you use equivalent. I use lead belcher, and then we're going to use Balthazar Gold for the haft, the shaft of the weapon. Normally I'd use wood, but all my Nighthaunt I've been using the Balthazar Gold as it, and I've kind of liked it. So we'll move on. Okay, so next we're going to do the haft of the weapon. So I've got my Balthazar Gold. Balthazar Gold. I'm going to grab a little bit on my brush, put it into my palette as usual. Just a little bit more than that actually. Then add a tiny blob of water just to thin it down just a tad, just so it's easier to use, so it's not so kind of blobby. And then what I'm going to do, is just going to paint the haft of the weapon. So starting up here. So that's where I'll stop, and just all the way down. And there's also a little bit in there that we can go over with the silver when we come to it. Alright, so that's the gold done on the haft, or the shaft of the weapons. Next I'm going to do the silver. I've already got some on my palette watered down. So next this will be for the actual head of the scythe, and also all the chainmail. And if there's anything like on the base that needs to be silver, so like it could be a helmet or something, but we don't need to do that, but just have a look on the model what you think needs to be silver. So we'll start off with the head of the scythe. And when I say thin your paints down, it's really hard to kind of gauge how much water you put in. What I like to do is when you dip the paintbrush in to the water, I like it so it kind of spreads whatever's on the paintbrush around, almost like an explosion around the brush. When you dip it in, when you kind of dip it into the water, it's like a little ring, just so that's probably about double the size of the brush, if that makes any sense. That's kind of how I've always gauged it, but I don't know. You probably know better than I. That's just what I like to do. Right, so I'll show you what it looks like when all the kind of silver's done. So again, I'm just going to continue doing the head of this scythe and all the chainmail around here, making sure I don't get any on the actual ghost itself. Okay, and that's all the silver done. So I've done the shaft of the scythe up here, and of course you can see all the chainmail's been done there and there. So I'm going to leave the little kind of rivets on the cowl, the trim of the cowl, blank for now. So I'm going to go over that. I'm going to paint that, the trim on the cowl, and also the blindfold that they're wearing. I'm going to paint that corn red. And then afterwards, after I've done like the wash and all of other bits, I'll just go over with Runefang steel and just plump, just pick out those little rivets just to do that. So yeah, we'll move on to the corn red now. This is going to be for the trim or around the cowl and also the blindfold. Next, corn red for the trim of the cowl and the blindfold. So I've got some already in my palette all ready to go and watered down. So then, got to be kind of careful with this one. So I'm going to do the blindfold. Sorry, the miniature in such weird ways when I'm painting. So yeah, I'll do the blindfold and then also the trim along here, which I'll start doing, and then I'll show you how it looks, because I'm finding it really awkward to paint with the camera in your face, weirdly enough. Not even in my face, in the miniature's face. And there we go, there's the trim and the blindfold done in corn red. So that's all ready. Just add that little bit of difference to the miniature. As I said, you're not going to win any awards with this paint job I'm doing. Like as I said, there's millions of other paints out there, but this is just my way of doing it and how to do it kind of like relatively quick and still look kind of nice on the tabletop. Okay, the next thing we need to do, because that's basically the miniature finished in that sense, the top half. But what makes it pop, we need to wash all of the parts that aren't the ghost. So the chainmail, the trim, the shaft, the actual head of the weapon, and the base we need to wash with Agrix Earthshade. At this point I'll do the base as well. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But we'll see. So what I'll do, so looking at this base here, so we've got a skull, then we've got some like rubble. So I'm going to do all the rubble in Mechanicus Standard Grey, and the skull I'm going to do in Ushabti Bone, because again this is just meant to be 3 foot kind of fabulous. Right, so Mechanicus Standard Grey we're using next, already on palette. This is going to be for all of the rubble around the skull, just to add some definition, well, to add a different colour to the base. So I will go all around the skull and just the same thing, not going to change up the colours too much. Just next to it there. Doesn't matter if you get it on the base, because my bases are sterling mud anyway. Is that part of the skull? So yeah, that part is part of the skull, so I'll miss that if I can, being as careful as I can. The main thing is trying not to get it onto the actual the ghosty bits. So it's a bit there. Oh, which I've immediately just failed to do. Oh well, never mind. So that's rubble, so then we'll do a Ushabti Bone for the skull. So next, Ushabti Bone for the skull on the base. If you're doing this properly, you'd probably do Xandri Dust, and then after the wash do Ushabti Bone. But honestly, again, this isn't for any kind of competition. This is just to get on the tabletop and to look relatively decent on the tabletop, or in my case, look good from 3 foot away. I think it was Luca on Mini Wargaming that coined the term 3 foot fabulous, or it was Steve, one of those dudes. So I might have to do 2 thin coats, because I don't want any of the blue showing through when I'm painting the skull. We will see. Alright, so there's the kind of the bits of the base done. So just gonna have a look. Doesn't matter that it's on, you get bits on the base because that's going to be sterling mud anyway. You see the back here, we're going to wash that. It's just to, again, show the difference of the back. But then what we do, wait for all that to dry. Then we're going to do an Agrex Earthshade wash over all the parts we've just done. So not the, oh my lord, I can't believe I've just done that. I can't believe you've done this. Thankfully it's kind of similar to the colour we've already put on, but never mind. So all of the metallics, the reds, and the bits at the base we'll go over with Agrex Earthshade. Okay, so Agrex Earthshade next. I've shaken the bottle, got the miniature, I'm using Ye Old Faithful. This is my brush I've had for absolute donkey's years. That's used for all kind of washes and glazes. As you can see though, it is it's an old brush, but it does me well. So again, we're going to apply Agrex Earthshade all over the metallic areas. So all along here, and also along the red, chainmail, and the base. And really make sure you get it in the recesses that are there, because then it gives some nice definition. Right, so that's all been done. So the base has been washed, trim, metallics, just to add a bit of definition. So we're going to wait for that to dry. And then the actual miniature itself is done. All I do next is go over with a slight dry brushing on the edges and over all the metallics of Rune Fang steel, which I don't normally do for all of them. And also I'll just, the rivets / notches in the trim, I just pick them out. Sorry for the car that's randomly having a horn in the background. And of course, basing the miniature, I use sterling mud. I probably won't do that for this one, just because I wanted to show you how the actual miniature's painted. But yeah, let's go ahead and wait for that to dry, then continue. Okay, so this is how it looks. This is how it's looking after it's dried with the wash on metallics. And I added the sterling mud just because it'll show you a bit of how it's meant to look at the end. So now what I'm going to do, I've got my Rune Fang steel, and I'm just going to dry brush the edges. So for instance with the scythe, let me see if I can steady this. I'm going to go back up and down. It's just to catch the edges, just so it adds a little bit of definition. I'm going to do it over the whole miniature. I say the whole miniature, all the metallics, just very lightly, just catching the raised areas. That one's not great, but oh well. Just to give it a bit of definition. Just add something else, add a bit extra to it, and then of course we'll do the chainmail. We'll do this carefully, probably a little bit more. So then what we'll do is we'll go through with a finer brush, my character brush from our painter, and pick out those. So we're going to get a little bit on my brush. I am going to water this down, just a little bit, just so it flows a bit easier. And then what I mean is I'm just going to literally, boop, just add a little bit of definition, just to pick them out. Boop, boop. Okay, so then I finish off all of the little, picking out the little details for that, and that is one Grimghast Reaper ready to go. So I'm just going to finish off the base, and the way I'll do that, I'll just, when it's dry, Agrex Earthshade, and then put a tuft or two down, and I will paint Abaddon black around the edges, and I'll show you how that looks. But that is one Grimghast Reaper done, relatively quick. Looks 3 foot fabulous. It'll be great for the tabletop, and that's what I aim for, just so it comes up on camera quite nicely. So I do hope you enjoyed this video. This wasn't something I was planning on doing, but I kind of enjoyed it in the end, which is kind of cool. I hope you did, it's the main thing. And if you want me to show you how I did my other kind of armies, leave that in the comments, and also let me know how I can improve, because again, I'm completely new to doing any form of painting tutorial, so this was a brand new experience for me, and I hope I did all right, and I hope you learned something, and I hope those people that did ask how I paint my Nighthaunt, that question has been answered. So until next time, until the next battle report, hope you enjoyed it. My name's Phil. Like and subscribe and donate to the channel. It really helps us out. All the money goes back into the actual channel. Happy wargaming, guys. Peace.